gonna call this into order, and we'll start with looking at the warrants and the minutes. I do have a couple questions on the warrants for Frank before we actually approve them, so maybe we can
Do you want to come back to it?
skip that, if that's okay with you all.
Skip all of it?
We could take just the minutes, if somebody wanted to make an actual motion on the minutes.
Move we accept the minutes.
And then I have discussion on the minutes via David's, that he just wanted to clarify some things, Jane, from, remember on the work plan we were doing some different ones? So he said that he wanted to make sure that the data reports that you mentioned included, let me see if he's really, actually, we could probably do that all under the work plan, but he said there's a mistake in the minutes in the section about representation on the board when I described the Wyndham Southeast Waste Management District Board.
Yeah.
It is based on population. Brattleboro has 1 representative and 6 votes. Westminster has 1 representative and 2 votes, and all the other towns have 1 vote. So we wanted to make sure that that was clear, what he was actually saying.
Okay, each town has 1 representative then, but not one.
Brattleboro has 1 rep, 6 votes.
Yeah. Oh, does he want it all listed?
Yes.
I guess. Westminster has 1 rep, 2 votes. All the other towns have 1 vote.
1 representative and 1 vote.
Yes.
What was Westminster again? 1 rep,
1 rep, 2 votes.
2 votes. Based on population.
Just so that was clear in the minutes. And then his other discussion was about the work plan itself, so we can look at that.
The work plan?
That we're discussing tonight. No, it's not in the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not so much in the,
I
Okay.
would have trouble finding
Yes,
it.
yes, we would.
Okay.
so then any other discussion on the minutes? So I think at this point we have to say the minutes be approved as amended.
Yes.
So then do I have to make an amendment to the motion?
Just,
Or as approved?
yeah,
Okay.
approved as amended.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, there we go. And now we'll come back to the warrants since Frank just walked in. Frank, can somebody make a motion that I ask a question?
I move that we approve the warrants.
It's not gonna be too hard for me. So Frank, the question that I had
It's right there.
on the warrants, where are they now? There's, we pay, there's listed in here that we're paying to Next Sun Energy in Rutland and Buck West allocated solar. Don't we, explain to me how the solar project works, that we're paying money out? I thought
Right.
that was to get money back.
Yeah, our primary payment is to Next Sun. The way the system works is that Green Mountain Power issues us a credit, and that reduces our bill theoretically out of approximately $100,000 annual electricity bill. They will reduce it by 90%. And when we pay back, when we pay Next Sun Energy, the concept is that we will have a net impact that's 10% less than what we would have paid if we didn't do anything. So we make payments to Next Sun as a result of them building a solar array that is creating these discounts that Green Mountain takes off our bill. So you see where Green Mountain is reducing their bill to nearly 0, but we're paying Next Sun to generate those credits. So,
I figured there was something that I had checked out, and we're sending those back. So all in favor of approving the warrants?
Aye.
And motion carried. So then we'll go on to administrative reports. And we have them already here. Mark, you're on that side.
First?
Yeah.
Okay, so report is very similar to the report of our last meeting. So we'll just touch on a few things. But looking on page number 1, under under the lunch section, free and reduced, and average number of students accessing our lunch and breakfast program. We don't have the average number for lunch yet. Donovan wasn't able to get that to us today. We will for the next meeting. But we have been keeping track of breakfast, and we're serving approximately 72% of the school breakfast every morning.
So did all of you do a big discussion with the students that they do have free universal breakfast in all 3 schools
I wouldn't say discussion, but we announced,
to the kids?
informed.
Huh?
And parents at home, in like my opening my summer letter,
Do a letter, a robocall.
And Mark, what was the average last year for breakfast?
Yeah, so last year we would average anywhere between 50 and 60 kids. This year we're about 160 kids.
That's
So
great.
it's tripled participation, which is really good. And I feel like we've developed a pretty good system for doing that and getting our day started on time. So that's been a nice addition. Under student programming, our official after-school program offerings will not start until October 17th. What we're in the process of doing right now is getting back ideas of programs from teachers. And essentially what we'd like to do is create a brochure of the entire year. So an outlook of the year of what we're going to offer all 3 sessions. That way, parents can make decisions throughout the year. If the makerspace is being offered in all 3 sessions, and they know that they really want their children to participate in makerspace, but also a music offering, that way they can kind of see the scope and the outlook of the year, and choose music one session, makerspace another one. So we're in the process of putting that together. We do have 2 programs that we have started. However, we have a spelling team of 8 students. Started today, actually, was their first spelling practice. And we have a cross-country running team for grades 5 and 6, which will be starting on Monday of next week. And that team will run through the middle of October and hopefully participate in a couple local 5Ks. 1 at least, maybe 2, depending on what is out there. And essentially, all the other information on the report was detailed at the last meeting in terms of facility updates, future dates to be on the lookout for. First PTO meeting is Monday of next week. Our tag sale, Green Street School tag sale, annual tag sale, will be on the September 24th from 8 to 12. So folks who are listening, that's always a nice event. And then our open house cookout will be September 28th. And then School Sing will officially start the first Thursday in October, October 6th.
Our report has come around. Today we started cross country. It was our first practice for that. Never in after school. No pun intended. After school today. Tomorrow night we have our first parent group. Todd got it.
I got it.
First parent group after tomorrow evening. Our parent group is called ACT, Academy Community Together. That's at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. Our open house is the 22nd. It's an open house back to school night. We start at 5. 5 to 6 is a barbecue in front of the school. 6 to 7, we invite parents and students to come in their classrooms. And we're also in the process of figuring out a way to give out approximately 100 coats for kids with a large number of boots, winter boots. Last year, maybe recall, was the last year for the former Christmas stocking, and they gave out coats. And they had a surplus, so we were fortunate enough to be able to access quite a few of them. I think we have somewhere around 90 of those quotes left. And we've been storing them, and through our parent group, we're figuring out a process, we're working this tomorrow night, we'll figure out a process to get those coats to families who could, who have children that use them. On our report, you'll see DCF reports. That number says 6. Actually, after this went to print today, we had another one, so we're actually at 7, which is rather significant. We've only had 5 days of school. Today, I was invited to a meeting with 2 other principals, with a group of folks. The meeting was in Montpelier. I joined it on a conference call, but the meeting was about children in crisis in Vermont. Now, just to give you the list of who attended, I was one of 3 principals from around the state. The principal from St. Albans, a principal from Mallett's Bay. I was the only principal from the southern part of the state. Melissa Bailey, Deputy Commissioner of Mental Health in Vermont, Charlie Bliss, Director of Child, Adolescent, and Family Unit from Vermont Department of Mental Health, Reed Murphy, Deputy Commissioner, DCF, Child Development Division, Karen Shea, Deputy Commissioner, DCF Family Services, Heather Bushi, Deputy Secretary of Vermont Agency of Education, Karen Edwards, Director of Pre-K Middle Integrated Support for Learning Division, Vermont Agency of Education, and Ken Page, the Deputy Director. And the conversation was about the crisis in Vermont with all of so many of our students who are residing in homes where their basic human needs aren't being met. And it's an epidemic in the state. In fact, I learned today that of all 50 states, Vermont is 4th highest state. The percentage of children have been removed from families. So only 3 states have a higher percentage of children who have been removed out of court, removed from their families.
Which states are in?
I don't know the 3 other states, but it's pretty startling when you think about it. And the state of Vermont has never had more children in foster homes than they do presently. It's ever since they've been foster homes, this is the highest number of children that have been. It's interesting to think it's the highest number of children in foster homes, yet the number of children in Vermont has gone down
Did they say what percentage?
over the last 10, 12 years.
Did they say what percentage of kids it is?
No. So a lot of interesting.
And Andy, when you report the DCF reports on your list,
Yeah.
can you give us an idea in a broad sense what that means? What makes a report?
Well, let me finish this. So, anyways, the point was that what we're doing, what we as a state, all these agencies are doing is not enough. It's not working. So it's gotten to the point where there needs to be a concerted effort to figure out what we can do to support families, but specifically what we can do to support children who aren't getting the kind of support they should be getting in their homes. I coined the term that orphans with parents, raising a generation of orphans with parents. It's really a crisis in the state. Well, the law, to answer your question, Joe, by law, if a child is being neglected or abused by an adult or by someone who is in a position of power or caretaker, then we are mandated reporters. We must file a report with the Department of Children and Family Services to alert them that we have information that a child has been medically neglected or physically abused or sexually abused. And it's a whole, by statute, there's a whole long list of what that means.
So really, the fact that there's so many right at the beginning of school is highly unusual, or that's the type of thing that could happen because you're just seeing kids again after the summer?
It's more than I'm accustomed to the first week of school. This is small sample size, 5 school days, but we probably average 6 a month throughout the school year, the last 2 years, and 7 in 5 days is hopefully not a trend that will continue.
So I was in a meeting this past week with Marisa Duncan-Hawley, Diana Wally, Sadie Fisher, Becca Ballant, and they reported that there are 146 families in Windham County that are now in DCF custody, second in the state to this county that St. Albans is in. And talking with our homeless coordinator today, there are 22 families in Windham Southeast right now, after 6 days of school, that have reported needing services for being homeless. So we know the numbers are increasing all the time.
One of the principals today was from St. Albans. 800 students in a pre-K through 8 school up there, and they're really challenged right now. And the thing is that in a lot of our schools in the state, and like our schools, what we're doing in school is pretty successful overall in terms of dealing with children who are suffering from trauma or neglect. That the kinds of things that we're able to do with board support, with support through our budget and so forth, with support from our HCRS clinicians, our counselors, social worker, we're able to really offer a lot of services for kids. So we're unusual in that regard throughout the state. So that is sustainable for us in our school. But we have students. We do the breakfast, free lunch, free breakfast, free after school, and we run extended day programs. But for most of our kids, after 6.5 hours, or some students 7.5 hours, they go home. We don't have an influence there, and that's right now where these kids are suffering.
Well, is this the same sort of trends and data that you're seeing from the other schools in our supervisor union?
Well, the homeless numbers throughout WSASU. So I would say that Brattleboro, of course, is higher because we have more students, but yeah.
We're seeing this in the other districts that, they talk about students in trauma, families in crisis or trauma. That's been a theme that we've been dealing with for at least 2 years, if not more.
We're planning a Windham County legislative discussion in November, so you'll hear more about it as we get closer, but inviting all of our legislators to listen to what we feel like at schools is happening in the crisis that we feel we're in.
Jeri?
Well, it's kind of hard.
You're out of the room.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to follow up, when you hear realities of our community and the children that are in our schools, and what they're coming to school with. Try to follow that up with, we're doing all these great things. But you need to. You need to do that. You need to still provide a caring, comforting, safe environment for kids, so that they can come and they can be here every day, that they can trust us, and that they know that they are fed and cared for. So our breakfast numbers are, I just had a leadership council meeting this afternoon, and we were kind of doing early, again, it's early, but looking at what is our breakfast program like. Because we provide breakfast from 7:45, and so we have seen an increase. We used to, on average, serve about 15 students. For breakfast, we're up to a little over 35, sometimes a little higher. once the bell rings, then we move to like a grab and go kind of situation. Kids know that there's breakfast. I've been out on the playground because they're used to kind of coming on the playground and still have that morning playtime. So we're hoping that once things get a little colder, that maybe it's like, and it's raining, we think our numbers will go up. But right now, they're like, oh, you mean I have to go in to get breakfast now? Oh, I want to keep throwing football. So our numbers, even though they've doubled, I mean, we're a small school, so we're on the path. It's nice to see parents, many parents have been coming in, especially like kindergarten, first grade parents have been coming in the morning and sitting down, and they're not having breakfast, but they're still eating there with their child, which is, it's very sweet to see that. So we're kind of just following the, checking in with the staff, checking in with teachers and with students about how breakfast is going, and if we have to adjust our time and our presentation about how we market it to include more kids, we'll do that. Still searching for a special educator, so that's been a little challenging. It's very tough this time of year, but the staff has really, that we have in the building, have really pulled together, and we're doing really phenomenal work with those kids, and other staff are kind of stepping in to help to provide services for those children. We did have our opening day family celebration. We served well over 150 students and adults pizza lunch, and we offer for parents, once students go to their classrooms, then parents can stay, and we had over 9 different workshops offered by our teachers, academic support, specials. We talked about technology, websites, PBIS, our new STEP program, homework supports, PTO, so parents have an opportunity to go in and out of workshops, and then they stay for lunch. So with a parent here in the audience, so hopefully that it seems to be well received by staff and the community. So we're going to continue doing that. So we really like it. And then just a little bit on because I provided my monthly report 2 weeks ago with my data around our total enrollment of 122. Knew where our kids were coming from. If we had students leave over the summer, new staff was included on that form as well. So the board report that I presented to you is just some little tidbits of what's going on. So we have a really positive start to the year. It feels really good in the building. Certainly, being my second year, I'm not just kind of turning the corner going, oh my God, now what?
We didn't think you were doing that last year.
Well, you never know.
You faked it well.
I thought you were doing that.
So,
Okay, can I just jump in on the food breakfast lunch program and just remind people that we do have the Vermont Food Bank food drop-off program the first and third Monday of the month. And so this year, with Labor Day last weekend, they did not have it, but it will be September 19th at 10 o'clock at the Wyndham Regional Career Center in the parking loop. We're starting to get probably 20 to 30 people coming, which is great. There is no eligibility requirement. They have really great, healthy food, and we encourage parents, grandparents, community members, come by the Career Center 10 o'clock on September 19th. And it's, again, the first and third Monday of the month, and we really think it's a great program for the community.
Anything else you want to say as your report?
Yeah, I know Frank has some, and I have a few things, so you want to do the finance?
Sure. That's okay? Sure. All right. Give you a up-to-date report as we close up the fiscal year 2016. That was just back in June. then I also have a procurement procedure that I wanted to discuss as well. So do we have enough documents going around? I got a few extras if we need it. You need one?
No, we're
All good.
Most of it? Okay. All right, so I've given you what we have submitted to the auditors for review. They're coming in next week, and they'll be doing their usual internal control review and test for whether or not statements fairly represent the financial condition of the district. So what you see here on the first page is the balance sheet, generally the most important financial statement of the district. The top section says assets, and you see we have $2,250,000 in assets. Most of that's cash. It's a good thing. And then when you turn the page, you see we have 1.3 million in liabilities. So that's significantly less than the assets, which is a good thing. And then we have our beginning fund balance of 664,000. You may remember that number. We talked a fair amount of whether that was a reasonable number for the district or not. So that's what we began the year, and we will add 242,000 to that number to end the year with approximately 900,000 in fund balance. On a $15 million budget, we're actually nearly 16 million. 10% is 1.6 million. We're well under a 10% fund balance, which is a very reasonable place to be. This is preliminary, so I don't expect it to change much, but that's where we begin the year as we look to fiscal year 18. Budget development. We're in a very stable, good financial position. So let me tell you why we went up a couple $100,000 in fund balance. Maybe before I move on, just briefly, there's a lot of detail on the balance sheet, which is not typical, and I would like to move all of these little accounts that are associated with fundraising accounts that you see by school district. I'd like to move them into a student activity fund, because that's what they are. It makes the balance sheet a one-page document instead of a two. It's a lot easier to follow. But in general, those balances are a reflection of the various activities that most often it's your principals that are coordinating and helping to supplement student activities. So, we'll talk about where did the 240,000 come from in terms of a favorable budget impact. Before I talk about that, let me just show you the other balance sheets. So I just gave you the one that most visible part of the general operating fund. It's where we present our budget, and it's what funds the budget. We also have Fund 2 here on page 3. That's early education services. I know that Deb Gass and Brenda Howe will speak to that, but we do operate their general ledger, and this is their financial status as of June 30th, 800,000 in assets, about 500,000 in liabilities. They began with a favorable fund balance, and they continue to have a favorable fund balance, even though there's a small operating loss there. Fund 3 is our capital fund. It's a quasi-capital fund in that it actually does not have a cash account. As you may recall, when there was a discussion of capital reserves, this board did not actually create a separate capital fund. You have a general reserve for whatever contingencies you may address. So that's why this fund, when you look at the balance sheet, it's a little bit unusual where it has no cash, and it basically says it owes the general fund $238,000. what that is the residual amount on the Academy pellet system. And, you know, when we put the whole balance sheets together, that's a deduct from our 900,000, right? So, because this is
But Franklin, we're
doesn't have a
talking,
funding source.
at the last Act 46 study committee meeting, we had a big discussion about what each town was bringing in and the reserves and how Dummerston was very concerned about how it was worded. So is ours worded in such a way that it would not be utilized by our schools? Or-
Your reserve is a general reserve, so you can argue that it's dedicated to whatever you see as a board as being needing funding. Now, we have done the traditional, associate that with, for example, the Green Street project that we're estimating to be probably in excess of 800,000. So we have associated the general reserve that we have with capital needs.
I guess my question is that Dummerston was very concerned about the legal language.
Yeah.
So do we fall under, does the Brattleboro Town Reserve fall under the legal language in the merger that it would remain with Brattleboro?
We should review that because if you go back to the articles when the reserve was established by the Brattleboro electorate, they were pretty specific that it was a general reserve and not specifically for capital. So, you know, I think we should revisit that as it relates to, well, okay, it is a reserve and it's simply an undesignated reserve.
Because my recollection of this, you guys might remember something differently, was that we wanted to make it broad enough that we could use it to offset taxes.
That's right.
Yes.
But my recollection, or my understanding of the Act 46 is actually that it's only if it's set aside as a capital reserve.
It's really specific to reserves, not just capital, because it's the same thing for endowments. You know, the endowments are another type of reserve. But I think you're raising a good question whether or not, you know, the board could designate that if you wanted to.
We should look at that again.
Yes.
Good question. But at this point, the capital fund is consuming resources from the general fund because it has no balance. But that was again a major reason why we said we needed to retain the 600,000 and not refund it to the taxpayer as a form of a tax credit, because we knew we had this bill that was still to be paid, and then we also had the Green Street project, and our capital plan has several other unfunded projects at this point. The next balance sheet is the food service. It's really just a pass-through mechanism now that, like special ed, food service is required to be administered through the supervisory union. So this is just really almost like a collection box in the Brattleboro Town General Ledger for the sales. So it's a flow through. Fund 7, I think it is another maybe a topic for a future discussion. It is the endowment fund in Brattleboro. The fund balance started with $62,000 back in July of 2015. We added $50,000 to that in the fiscal year. So we have we'll have that ending fund balance of approximately $112,000. There was a distribution to the Brattleboro Town School District from an estate with no conditions and no restrictions, just to the benefit of the Brattleboro Town School District, and that was in the last fiscal year. So at this point, it's part of the Brattleboro Town School District assets, and there is no designated recipient or criteria to award.
So Frank, the other thing that should probably be talked about at some point Because there's a privately started Brattleboro school in Downey as well, that the school board has a representative on, which is Mark. Although Ellen, Catherine, and I started it. And so, particularly if a merger does go through, maybe it makes sense to combine them somehow, or
As long as, I mean, you can designate this for specifically Brattleboro schools, so. you could-
I mean, that's what the other one is,
Yeah.
specifically 501c3.
So that one would
Is
be.
this a 501c3?
Nope, this is simply one of 6 different funds and separate accounts, all under the Brattleboro Town School District tax ID. But it's part of the public school district. Whereas the endowment you're talking about would really be totally unaffected by Act 46 because it is a different entity, a different tax ID.
And the other Putney ones and Dummerston ones are also done by central office, or are they outside?
This is, yeah, in terms of when you say done by central office manages all of the general ledgers and financial statements if it's associated with the school district tax ID. If it's like what you're talking about, no one at the school or the central office has any fiduciary.
So what is Dummerston and Putney?
Dummerston is a very small endowment of like $1,200, I think, at the school. And Putney's about 56,000, and I think it is for a type of student.
So they're under your management?
The school district, yeah.
So only Brattleboro has one outside.
So those are the balance sheets, and as I say, generally the most important measure of financial solvency. Because it's, the balance sheet is the accumulation of, since the beginning of time, of your surpluses and your deficits and your acquisition of assets and your depreciation of your assets. And it comes down to fund balance, which is the difference between the pluses and the minuses, and you're in good shape. So just briefly, the primary source of the approximately 200,000 favorable improvement in our operating fund. If you flip to page 7, and then after it's, and I just wrote that in there, that little page 7. After that, it's a different numbering sequence. But that's our revenues in the operating fund. And you see our budget was $15,410,000 on the far left side column of data. And our year-to-date through June was $15,500,000. So that's we received $100,000 more than our plan. Most of that was the school improvement grant that Lyle and Paul Central Office helped secure with the input of our principals. So you see that as 82,000 up in the upper third, the Title I subgrant. We had a plan of about 520,000, but we received 603. And that's the school improvement grant. Has had a very positive effect in learning. So that's the majority of the revenue variance. So there's some other variances there, but you can see that's nearly half in total. Nearly half of the improvement in fund balance out of the 200,000. 100,000 is right here, and it's those pluses and minuses. So the other 140,000, because the total favorable variance is 240. You just go to the back page of this document. It's the report, page 14. It's the total. Again, we see the same number on the far left side. Total expenses budgeted $15,410,000. Because remember, we proposed a balanced budget as opposed to one with a credit. And our results were $15,268,000. So we spent $141,000 less than we had planned. And you take your revenue variance, which was favorable, and you add that to your expense variance, and that's how we get to 240. Good to note on the very far right-hand column, this is less than 1% variance, right? 0.92% is less than 1% different than our plan. So, it's not a very large variation. And as far as where did that come from, there are several pluses and minuses, but maybe some of the notable ones that are right here in this section, page 13. Special education. Out of that 140 favorable, you can see toward the bottom there are two subtotals. Special ed eligible state aid, and that means expenditures. It has a 200 after it. The budget was 553 and we spent 494. We're favorable by 59,500. Those were our paraeducators and costs that are incurred at the district as an employer. So we were favorable there, and then the supervisory union is the next line down.
Would that special education be part of the 300,000 that, no?
That was a
That's
prior
another-
year.
That was a prior year.
So this is more savings.
It's happening every year.
Yeah.
Well, I know Dave has had a lot of questions on this, too bad he's not here.
Right.
We'll have to
I thought
circle
maybe
this
We'll be
in.
confused and
There we go, David, right there. So, does he's questioned exactly how it happened, so
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
we can find it.
And you can see that where it's here. Now the other variable favorable variance is in the supervisory union assessment. So the assessment was 2,877,000, so that's the next line down, and it's a subtotal 212. So this is for all of the learning specialists, the case managers that are here in Oak Grove, Green Street and Academy that are employed by the SU. The SU obviously has to bill the taxing authority, which is the school. And so the plan was 2,877,000. We actually assessed 2,798,000, which is 79,000 less than the plan, and that was primarily associated with the Triple E program, and the types of need versus and what was planned for versus the actual enrollment.
Triple E is again special ed, early education.
So between those two, 59.5 and 79,000, that is 140,000 right there, and your variance is 140. So you could say that it's largely attributed to a favorable result in special ed. And as you go through this detail, we don't need to do that now unless you're interested, but as you go through the detail, you'll see that there are a lot of pluses and minuses, but in general, they obviously net out to pretty much the plan, which is a good place to be.
So can we make sure this is up on the website?
I would say once the audit is complete, I would suggest.
Didn't the budget people, wasn't that one of the criticisms from the town representatives last year, that they had a hard time finding budgets as it goes
Because the
on?
budget as opposed to the actual results.
So you don't feel comfortable putting this up until it's,
I think it creates more confusion than it answers questions, in that if that is on, people may do their reviews and ask questions, and then we change the numbers, and my experience is that
how long
So when
do you
the
feel
final
that-
audit comes in,
the final audit should be available in October.
we
So
post
much.
that.
Yes, yeah, and the current audit is on the website, so
Does
there's.
anybody else have questions on this? Tom? Good. You're still looking at numbers?
Yeah, just the numbers.
She's digging.
Okay.
We want to take a break and
Yes, so we always recognize visitors right at the beginning. You weren't in quite yet, so if you want to give your name so Jane can write it for the minutes.
Sure. My name is Susie Belleci, Belleci.
Did you have any specific items you wanted to address on the agenda? Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a little break from finance to,
Because he has a second item.
We did have some procurement.
yeah, but it's on the agenda later.
Oh,
We
very
can bump
good.
it up, but just a little break in the.
You're tired of numbers, Rob?
Yeah, I just want to talk about students.
Okay.
Pre-K. So we had a request with the pre-K partnership that we do have a student that, it must be a 4-year-old that's enrolled in one of the pre-K programs that we partner with. And apparently the cutoff date is September 1st for the birthday. This student has a September 9th birthday. You have the ability within your policy to waive that. We would recommend that you do that because the 8 days is not significant in terms of any sort of, it's not a learning issue. Like with kindergarten, we always want to do the testing to make sure that an early kindergarten student is appropriate for that class. That's not the case with the preschool. What it allows for is we would then count the student as part of our average daily membership. We would provide the daycare or the preschool with the $3,100 that we do with all of the individual student numbers. It makes sense for the preschool, it makes sense for the family, and it doesn't have any sort of negative impact on the town school district. So we would recommend that you have a motion to make this exception.
So moved.
Any discussion?
This is for one student.
Yeah.
This is one student, it was an email request that I forwarded to the whole board. Since it's a student privacy matter, we didn't want to discuss the person's name, but I wanted to have a discussion in public since it was a question educational for me. I didn't know how this process works. All in favor? Aye. All right.
And does this mean the student's going to kindergarten or
No.
pre-K?
Pre-K.
Pre-K, okay, thank you.
So I'll be in touch with the parent. Yeah.
Did you have anything else on your administrative?
No, further down I have stuff.
So then we move on to policy council. Well, actually, before we go to that, I had asked Deb, since she was not here at the beginning of last month, and we got the reports emailed to us. And so I asked her specifically to answer something during this meeting, but she's not here because she's on vacation this week. So my question was to remind us why the balances of the percentages left to spend are not the same in early Head Start and Head Start. And her answer was that we've not received our full funding amounts for the year. We've only received half due to our option C proposal, which was approved late into the year. We will soon receive the rest of our funds for the year. During the process of developing option C, we were asked to reallocate more equitably the administrative costs associated with both the early Head Start and Head Start programs. We haven't been able to do that in the past for valid reasons, which she can explain another time. Those charges will show when we have received this last installment, and that will balance out the discrepancies you were questioning. And the second question was if she could also update us on the staff hirings and openings, since that's something we've been tracking. And so she just wanted to let us know that we currently have 6 teacher positions open. We continue to advertise and recruit for those positions. Those we are hiring are coming in with higher qualifications, which is refreshing. And also by the end of the day, there were 2 family support specialist positions open. This was September 6th, Tuesday, so I guess it's
Really,
much
really positions,
trying to fill them.
No, they have subs.
Just subs?
Subs right now while they look to hire. I know that we authorized hiring a couple. She had a few hirings that policy council had approved, so I know that they still have to finish going through references
Are they able to find that many subs?
yeah, they have subs, and we approved some additional subs too, so.
So then that moves us on, I guess, to the policy council. Anything else to add?
No, I left my notes in the car, so.
Energy committee,
Not
they're
here.
not here. I
No,
don't
there's
think they've met
finance.
anyway, right? The energy committee has, Frank, is there anything to know about the boiler and moving that project forward?
Yes, I have been in touch with the Winterwood Heat folks and asked for a timeline and a framework of major targets in terms of what has to be done to access their support, which is $75,000 for the base project, and then possibly another $25,000 if we achieve all of their requirements, and this is for the Green Street project, which was his a priority. So I do expect to be getting a timeline within the next couple of weeks, and we'll share that.
Finance committee, have you met again?
No, they're scheduled to meet on the 14th, and I know that because I can find 2 items here. They'll be serving as a screening committee for the superintendent search, and so they will be essentially talking about the process at that time on the 14th.
University, do you have anything else?
Just a reminder from last time I said September 29th, it's a family dinner, a student dinner invitation on September 29th. It's a Thursday at 6 p.m. Trying to do outreach with families of color. We're certainly inviting all families, but just to kind of talk about some of the challenges that these families are dealing with, some of the resources that we want to make sure that they know is available. And so that's the 29th at BAMS at 6 p.m.
Okay. So then I believe, any other committee reports anybody else had? Or we'll move on to the new business, and that would be the calendar, which was distributed earlier. This is based on our last discussion. Do you want to say something?
Well, I just plugged in the dates based on the Wednesdays, 1st or 3rd, and some of the goal discussions that we had in terms of either, like, let's say September 21st, the data reports, multiple assessments. We could also combine it with the student climate surveys and invite middle school leadership students to review their action plans. So we would need to confirm that with principals that that's enough time.
So, for the 21st, the data reports, I'm not sure we're gonna have a lot of benchmark data.
I think it's from last year to review.
So, we did talk about having this year's initial, I remember Dave saying something about you do initial benchmarking right here at the beginning of school, just to share that. So if you don't have,
We won't have
We
it.
won't have it.
We won't
so
have
then
it.
I think we should put, I think that's what Dave was specifically looking for. So maybe we should push that.
What's a
to-
time frame that would be reasonable for
Well,
that?
that's like the week that we're actually reviewing it with teachers, I think,
So when would be,
When do you want to do it?
do it the next meeting.
October 19th? Yes?
Everybody will have had their data meetings by then, so everybody will have a chance to review it.
okay. Is that also the time to bring the students? Or invite students with the counselors?
I think it should be separate, personally. I think it would be better to be separate,
Okay.
so we could really highlight the students.
So
in
could we
the-
stick with
MSLT stands
middle
for?
school leadership training?
Just one more after.
When did that happen?
Well, I'm suggesting, if you think it's not too early, September 21st, which would be the next meeting.
So this is actually bringing middle school students back.
Sixth
No.
graders here.
Sixth graders.
President said.
Yeah, present six. Because those are the kids, it's grades 6 through 8, but Brattleboro Town would be the sixth graders.
So the students who participated in the middle school retreat.
Yeah, or your school leadership team.
Okay.
Is that enough time for them to prep something and feel confident?
They already have the action plans from the
They've done
summer.
it, yeah.
So I think if they were just describing what topics they worked on in the summer to start for the school year, I don't think it's a lot of prep.
Yeah, I think they could do that. Our formal student leadership programs, like Student Senate and Restorative Justice, most likely probably won't be established by then, but we could certainly bring those students who participated over the summer with Tracy.
So from, what are you all thinking that we're going to say? I just want to make it clear to the kids that I'm thinking of a 3-minute, 5-minute presentation that we would do right at the top of the hour, just so they are not spending hours to prepare something. So huge.
Yeah, I think in total, it might be 15 minutes. We hear from each school, the work that
Right,
they're
so
doing.
3 to 5 each
Yeah.
would bring us to 15 minutes.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so we'll leave that on. I see, Act 46 on October 19th and November 2nd, did we want?
Yeah, I think that's gonna change based on our conversation today.
But did we want 2 forums anyway here in Brattleboro?
Well, we would have needed it because of the statutory requirement of November 8th, but if that changes, then that's gonna change.
What's the statutory requirement we have to do?
You have to have it within, it says it there.
I know, but I've never heard, what,
A public forum within 10 days of the vote. So just
so
like.
within, right before 10 days, within 10 days, that's what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember
So like when you
hearing
do your school information meeting for Brattleboro Town
It's
annual
right
meeting.
before the
Right
rights
before
meeting.
the vote. That's all statutory.
I thought it was just because it was convenient. No one ever told me it was a statutory thing.
Good idea.
It was, it was a good idea.
Now
Now
we've been
you know.
following statute for
Well, that's
15
good to
years.
know too.
That's good.
Why would
So
I know
anyway,
that?
I think there'll be some flexibility on those November dates, especially the November 2nd one.
But I think it's still decent to have one
Yeah.
earlier. So we want to leave October's anyway and then see about November's?
I might advise you to, if you leave October as a forum, then you bump the data to November 2nd.
The data report?
Yeah.
These
If you're
that
gonna,
we're gonna move to here, we move them to here now.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking though? It's nice if we have the kids here and then we go into the community forums, not so bad, but I'm also thinking in November, if we only have one forum and it's preschool, that would probably be good. And not have 2 times of expecting public to come out, participate in any sort of discussion. So I kind of want to leave the October 46, Act 46 discussion and then move, and the preschool discussion and then move the, anything else around that we have to move.
All right, so I'm saying, let's move the data to November 2nd to get rid of this forum.
Okay.
but we have to do the November community forum.
Not,
No.
tomorrow night, we're gonna have a discussion about potentially changing that date based on some input from the town clerks. So if that happens, and that's the vote of the study committee tomorrow night, then we wouldn't have to have them within 10 days statutory. So I guess that's all kind of tentative,
Yeah,
anyway.
so we can come back to that.
So when we say community forum, is that all we're doing that night? We're not really meeting? What do you all think?
Which one?
Well, like the preschool one.
I don't know, we've typically met at 5. and
Yeah,
it's
always
always the
meet
forum.
and then do it after.
We don't have any always that we have to do. That's, I'm just wondering what the will of everyone else is.
I would ask this question, this will be the third forum, so what's the purpose, what's the expected outcome from this forum? What do you want, so after this forum,
So
we should
that's
know,
on-
we should be able to do what?
Unfinished business, point number B. Letter B.
Point number?
Point letter B.
What would it be?
But I think that's excellent discussion, but
Is it a carryover from the discussions last year in the spring?
so we can get to that.
Well, I'm trying to answer this question.
We don't know that answer until we discuss it because it's a good question. But I think the date, time, I think we're okay with. I just wanted to get through the book.
We don't wanna go from September 21st to November.
No, we would still be meeting October 19th,
Correct.
right? Oh, I get that because I'm asking about community.
Yeah.
All right, so then October, we would definitely have a board meeting ahead of that on the 19th. And then maybe we meet at 5 on the 2nd too, just so okay.
So then in December, January, I put in budget, capital plan development and review, budget development. The second meeting in January included community forum. I just put it support for all learners. I think it's the issue about trauma. The topic that we were talking about earlier in terms of the,
And Dave had a question about including multi-tiered levels of support, and I think that's what MTSS is, right? Support systems, is that how you get to the two S's?
Systems of support.
Systems of support. So, is that going to be covered, you think, in this community forum on January 18th, or is that a different topic?
Yeah, he doesn't want a presentation on what it is. He's talking about wanting data to show that it's working, which I'm not sure you have direct. My question is there actually direct data, or isn't the rest of the data kind of reflective of all the systems that you have in place?
Right, I mean, it's very holistic, so multiple, so we don't have data that they can say, well, because we're doing MTSS kinds of things, we can show student growth in this area.
It's like best practice.
Right.
For
Didn't we also talk about understanding exactly what it was by some
Right, well, I think
anecdotal?
I think for both, when the conversation goes on or came up with multiple assessments, and MTSS, it's clear that we haven't succeeded in really explaining well what those are. So I think starting point might be to really give you a better Cliff Note version of what MTSS is and what multiple assessments are.
so Lyle, we can do that again.
Yeah, but here's the
I
problem.
don't want that. I feel all set.
Okay, you're on.
I mean, can I skip that one? Or?
Yeah, skip that one.
No,
I-
So,
The thing is like if you, can I take a stab at this?
Sure.
If you have a school where you have these assessments on academic achievement, all these things we're talking about, and we get reports on those numbers, and then you get data around parent climate surveys, and then you see the kids engaged in all these after-school activities, and then we see that our lunch program is going up, then can't we make some assumptions that things like MTSS and other systems that you're putting into place to approach students are working? It's not direct, you're not going to have direct MTSS data, is that correct?
Correct.
All these other things, when you have a healthy school across the board, might suggest that things like MTSS are working, but they're not direct. They're not like, it's not a test with questions and answers. It's how they're approaching the education of the kids and how they're servicing all levels of students, correct? So it's in the background. It's something that's operating as best practice to approach. It's not something that's going to come out with quantitative results.
So when I heard that we were gonna hear this, what was in my head was the anecdotal type thing so that I can put my head around it better. What happens when you say MTSS, and what does that mean specifically? How does it work? Which somebody at one point in my years on the board explained really well what happened with exit cards and check-in programs, and I can't even remember if that was MTSS or
So
the
back in the day
PBIS.
when I taught, if the kids didn't get it, say, I taught it, we didn't learn that.
Right.
Okay, so, but we know that was a pretty faulty way of teaching. So, did I have you?
We try to say.
So, but now, when teachers teach content, concepts, we know that kids learn it at different rates. Some kids need to see things more often and hear it again. So there's various ways that teachers can assess that. That's the form of assessment. One way might be if just did some math today, we did long division. When the class ends, it could be an exit ticket, so the teacher might might give 3 problems to do, and the students put that down on paper, and then she takes those home and looks at them to see if kids are making mistakes. Was it just that they did careless mistakes and they added incorrectly, or do they not understand the concept of long division at all? Or other things you could do in class by just calling out kids randomly to see who got that and who didn't. So there's a whole host of things, but it's like you check back, you collect data on the fly. You might do it orally, you might do it paper, as an example, to gauge whether or not your instruction is, whether the kids are mastering, understanding what you're teaching. So, and then you figure out, well, I have to teach this again a different way to kids, and you layer that. And then there might be some kids who are really well behind. So you might then, that's differentiating instruction. Then we might go to, well, kids need an intervention because they're reading a year below grade level.
So what we did in January of 2015, 2 years ago, was a topic, Learning for All, and Shelley Wilson, Deb Gass, Lyle, Marisa, principals, we talked about what Andy's just talked about, but also then the specific interventions. These are the things that will clue us in to do these interventions. And that's really what MTSS is.
And that was the PowerPoint, we got the whole breakdown,
Yeah.
we had the whole presentation.
Yeah, at Green Street School.
So you're saying you
We
are
could do that.
comfortable and don't want to have another whole meeting on that?
I don't know what to say, what's appropriate, so I'm just gonna start saying things and people can cue me in. I kind of feel like as board
I
members,
can't kick you that far.
I feel like we should all go back through our notes and look at it, and if we have questions, we should bring them back. Like, I feel like we asked for a presentation, we got the information presented really clearly, and it's our responsibility to hold on to that information, not to just keep asking for it every other year. I feel like at some point, it's just going back over stuff we've already asked for. It's fun to ask for stuff and see you guys supply it, but I want to keep moving forward. That's just my own personal thing.
Got something to add to that?
No, I kind of agree with Todd.
So do I. So let's take it.
I do understand the presentations and appreciate them each time they're done.
So cross that off.
So, except it's a little bit different what I have here, support for all learners. It's this issue of the lack of agency, the capacity.
Should we change the title of that?
I
then?
just put this in to hold the space.
Because I think the trauma, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Trauma
Right.
and behavioral
Yes.
supports.
Yes.
Maybe we should do it instead of.
Most definitely.
Instead of the
Well, that's
basic
what I'm
MTSS.
talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
that, I agree with that too. That would
Yeah.
feel like,
I think that's,
yeah.
So we're just kind of
Well, but it's
well,
the same
it's
stuff.
from David's email. We're blaming David.
okay.
So what are we going to call it? January 18th?
It's not.
Well, it's, what do we call a school, trauma-informed schools? Let's do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and / community.
That's the stuff that ties into all the stuff Andy's been talking about.
And what Mark had said last time,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
wants to
for
make
sure.
almost a czar position
All
there.
right, so
Generation
I'm
of
putting
orphans with parents.
trauma-informed schools / community.
Okay, there we are. I think that's what we want.
Thank you.
Is
The
that
other,
for January?
January 18th. I'll revise this and get this back up.
so, new reading program, Eureka Math, he also wanted to know about that. Is that on? Not really.
Is that going to be part of the data review or not?
I feel like, I don't know what he really wants to know about the math program. I don't really need to know as a school board member how a math program looks.
And we did the reading streak, we did it here, we had teachers here presenting the new reading program, so.
And that was interesting to me, but I don't feel like it's something we really needed to either. Maybe I'm wrong.
So would it make sense to have a small group where teachers do the Eureka Math?
Yeah.
I'd
They do
want
with
them
Paul.
to
Well,
get a little more into
want
it.
to hear about a specific math program as a board member?
It's basically first year implementation
Oh,
nationwide,
I don't want to
so maybe like a
shoot
spring.
it all. Stuff down there. I just don't know what this thing is. So that, what is the biggest reading or not?
Because we're mumbling here because I don't, I don't think I need to know as a board member what math program you're using and teaching. I'm not, so we're not sure what David is meaning.
Well, I think we
by-
want to know, but we don't need to know so much the intricacies.
Well, I mean, to me, if you tell me you're doing Eureka math or happy-go-lucky math, I don't know the difference. I mean, it's, I'm gonna assume that you know what you're buying for curriculum. So maybe we have to ask David next meeting what he.
Can we-
And what Mark just said is, it's probably more likely that the teachers would be prepared to do an overview in the spring, so maybe we look at March 1st as a chance to maybe
And that would give
something there.
David a chance to speak specifically to what he's looking for, because
Okay.
I've lost it a little, and I don't want to just shut it down without.
Knowing his requests.
Right. I'm gonna put it on the agenda items for next time, is to look at specifically Eureka math, what he was wanting. And that would be your January 18th, what you had kind of
Look at March 1st.
March 1st.
And then the same thing for the reading program, same questions?
You say March 1st for the math?
Well, we did already.
Well, we've
Yeah.
already done the reading
We've done the
programs.
reading.
Yeah.
We did the,
We can have our literacy people
Yes.
remind us.
Okay. Anything else as we walk through this plan of work? The last thing he said is a community forum on math in general. And that was something that we were talking about, in that people in the community might want to understand how we teach math. I think people understand fairly well that in reading, if you need to have a harder reading, there's different reading levels for kids in the different classes, but the math has been the question that came out of the community. What we do to differentiate instruction in math was the question,
So we'll hear about that March 1st.
right? And specifically, we put that in the
Yeah.
word playing math. Okay, so then, unless we have other things on the work plan, no, Andy, we're just looking.
Well, I think some of the questions you're asking about math or being asked about math or reading, it's probably appropriate for asking you to appropriate money. Like I think with the reading, there was a big discussion about it, in the Olympic series, Reading Street. There was a big discussion at a meeting which had a lot of people from the public there in that night, as I recall, and that was a conversation about why there's a request for that kind of money, why there's that need, and what need that this program will fill. And that was a very appropriate discussion at that time. And so it seems like, if we're asking you for that kind of money, then you have every right, you probably should know why we want to do Eureka math, why we're going to do this, and so forth. At that time, so puzzling to not go back and revisit the Reading Street program.
Or maybe it's the result, it's the request for like, okay, now that we're a year in,
Yeah.
can we measure its effectiveness? That, I think,
Yeah, and I think
is great. I just
That
don't
might
need
be
the
it.
explanation.
Yeah.
So Todd Lyle just said to me, we've had some great results with kindergarten screening as a result of this program, so that would be something we
Yeah.
could highlight in March.
Yeah.
So I have both the math and is it the Reading Street? So,
That makes more sense, Tom.
So versus
Yeah,
like
thank
getting
Yeah.
the description again.
right.
Right, I don't understand why I need that, that's okay. Okay, then, I believe we're on to Andy's question. B.
Preschool.
Oh, well, we did skip here. Any known special evenings at the school that we should put into the calendar? Did you have already, do you know that there's an arts night or a tech night or a math night that perhaps we wanted to feed into our calendar and try to move a board meeting to that night so we would be participants?
We got all the dates for September set.
Well, we probably need to go further out than that.
Right.
We haven't
We
scheduled,
haven't scheduled Arts Night.
those yet. Those should be forthcoming in the future. But those arts nights are usually in the spring.
In April, yeah?
I think we actually pushed them up a little bit this year. Were you March?
So we were we have our schedule for April 6th, which is the day after, it's a Thursday night.
So I would love to see us move our meeting from April 5th to the 6th, if that's possible for people, and then we,
What would that, can I ask if you're gonna have that here? What would that look like, that you would just,
what time does arts night start?
usually like 5:30?
Well, that might be hard.
Well, I just, there are just a lot of people because they've, you know,
They roam the halls.
they roam the halls and the halls are filled and the rooms are all open.
Maybe
and
it's not a good idea.
I would love to have you. I just don't know how it would look for a meeting and community members.
I was
really
thinking it could be something where it's a short meeting, 45 minutes, an hour-long meeting, and then move out and be participating in the art night. But if it starts at 5:30, we would have to come 4:30 in order to not, I don't know, maybe that's a possibility, though, 4:30. No. So maybe it's a bad idea and we just come as we can, which is what we've been doing. I just feel like we don't always get ourselves into the school as much as would be nice.
Well, there are 5 of you, and if you each tried to go to one of them.
What's that?
There are 5 of you, there are 3 schools, if each of you tried to go to one as a citizen.
That's true. I'll call Academy since I have to go. Anyway.
You should diversify.
No, I don't want more time.
You said that's on April 5th? Why are we talking about moving in April 5th?
Oh, Jill was trying to find,
Art
Yeah.
night.
we're not gonna move it.
We're not gonna move because it wouldn't fit, but if it would fit, then we'd move the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, just like the 16th, November 16th, and next night, we have our curriculum night and harvest dinner.
November
but
16th?
on the 17th,
Oh.
but the same thing. I can't imagine trying to have a
That's
meeting like
before.
this while
Yeah.
dinner and all this stuff is going on around.
No,
I
it would
just
be something ahead and then join in that activity.
Mhm.
But that won't work for that community forum.
No.
Maybe we talked about goals. Maybe that's one of our goals for the year is for each of us to get to one event that's going on in the schools and we just pick what works. Does that sound reasonable?
So your basketball team?
A drumming event, perhaps?
Cross country's running.
Cross country.
That's right.
So we'll try.
Yeah.
I go,
I'll leave early and I'll go to that, not the game that Ron is getting called out on. Yeah.
We will post that.
moving on, update on preschool. So, Andy's question is very valid. We promised, I believe, at the end of our last one that we would be coming back to it with another one, and we talked about it in the fall. Beyond that, I think, Ron, you left it by saying pretty clearly that you thought we should be investigating how to put a preschool into our schools. So what else do we want to talk to the community about, hear from the community about? Don't all jump at once.
How do we achieve that? How do we achieve a preschool in the public schools?
For me, I think where I'm at mentally with this preschool conversation is more of an interaction with Deb and how she's said many times that it would be a better program if the Head Start program were integrated more with the public schools. And that it would be possible, but it would take quite a bit of preparation and planning. And I'm not sure what the preparation and planning steps look like.
The concept would be a melded classroom with, half of the students would be Head Start and half would be non-Head Start students. Well, let's say a classroom at Academy, if we had a space to do that. And, do that the first year, and then ideally, at Oak Grove and Green Street, again, space is limited to be able to add, you know, each of the Head Start classrooms to one of the elementary schools.
Andy, what are you thinking this forum would look like?
So that's not necessarily a topic for the forum.
Yeah.
That's more planning, program planning.
Well, I don't have specific thoughts about it. I think but if we don't have a purpose in mind or outcomes, then we're going to just get more of what we got last time, which is just sort of redefining or glorifying the issues. I think we need to move beyond that. And I think really, I mean, we need to make a decision. Are we going to are we going to be pre-K to 8 schools? And if we think that's the direction to go, then the next thing is, well, how do we do that? What are the costs? What about the space limitations? What are all the issues that are inherent with that? And how do we go from here to there? How long is it going to take? What's that timeline? How do we get funding? How do we get the space?
So I don't hear that as a
we should be a
forum.
pre-K to 6 system.
I don't hear that as a forum.
I don't either.
I agree with Andy. I don't think we should have another forum until we have some of these thoughts, you know, specifically down on paper. What? Because community has already expressed what they want and need.
I don't want.
Yes. So we need to, when we go back to the table, we need to be able to present something to them, what our action plan is.
And in order to move this forward, say by next fall, is that
Yeah, it's
conceivable?
really gonna depend on space, and I think I know we have the resources,
Which resources?
the financial resources to make it happen.
And the teaching?
Yeah, because we're already funding the teacher, we'll be funding a para with the classroom, we'll be shifting resources from early ed services to the school. We would be raising the salaries of those employees, which we should do anyway.
Is there a way to include community members in a smaller committee or a committee that's working on these things? Like, that, first of all, I think the same thing, when you get everybody together, you get all these problems, and it gets, even for me, like overwhelming, like, do they think we're solving all these problems? Because things start coming out that almost have, I mean, they're all connected, but they get off the track of just the preschool question. But the one thing that I'm struck with is there's a lot of people advocating for the transportation and for professional development of the other schools, and how would a public preschool impact some of our partners' programs, would it affect it negatively or not? All these questions that were super legitimate concerns that I just don't hold I don't hold that knowledge. So I was left with the feeling like, wow, can you develop like a 2 or 3 member group from that larger group that works with us, at least in the early brainstorming stages? So, because they're pretty eloquent about these problems, and specifically how they impact, you know, down to the kid. It might be nice to have a spot where those things could be advocated for.
I love that idea from a couple perspectives. One, I think where I'm saying that I thought we said to the community we'd be back to them, is that I feel like the community has said to us they don't want here's the decision, and not feel like they were a part of the process. And 2, I feel like the community's also looking to the schools to resolve a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's a community-wide problem. So involving people in this process would really be
I don't know.
advantageous.
And then Kim just suggested an action plan, which in my mind is a really concrete step to take for that smaller group. So let's create an action plan. What are the steps that we actually need to go through? What do we need to consider? And then some possible actions to move us to completion on that idea. So I see that group as maybe helping create that action plan.
What's the process? That's what I don't know. Yeah, how do you?
Well, they're gonna come up with a process.
I'd wanna talk to the principals first about the
Yeah.
resources. What are the limitations that we know? Kind of make sure that if we think we can go forward, we have the resources to do it. And
So
then,
even
we-
before that, Ron, maybe the board should be saying whether or not we officially support this, right?
except you may not know what you're supporting right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So we support the idea of looking into it.
Yes,
Yeah.
we support.
So I think we could have a formal motion at that point to move us forward that way, and then we could actually start this movement. Todd?
I'll let you go.
I don't know how to say it. I move that
Okay.
we investigate the possibility of public preschool within the next year.
The financial realities of people.
Not just financial, but logistical realities too.
So I guess
Hence
there's.
the creation of.
Yeah, all right, I'll leave it.
Second.
Quiet. Any more discussion? All
I
in
need a
favor?
little help with that.
Jill can clarify.
Yeah. What do you have down so far, Jane?
I got investigate preschool, well, in schools, logistical and financial.
Sure.
It's good enough.
And,
We're just saying that we're gonna talk about something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, great.
well, we're saying.
No, that
We're committing, yeah.
We're committing
asking
and
the
we're asking the
administrators of the-
administrators officially to go forward with this and to come back with specifics as to what it's gonna cost and what it would look like.
So
And an
that,
action plan.
so then,
So we need to actually vote? All in favor?
Aye.
so they come back with that information and then at some point we talk about how to do a joint sort of community / school board.
Well, so I was thinking I'd make a second motion,
What-
maybe it's silly,
What,
but
what is it?
a second motion stating that we're asking
You got
the
it.
administrators to form, form an action plan with input from the community.
Okay.
So there's my second motion, Jane?
Admin to form,
A preschool,
come back, oh, a preschool action plan
yeah,
With input.
with input
with input from community.
community members. So that's broad enough to give you.
Second.
And I've got like 3 people that I would keep in mind that I present to you.
Discussion. All in favor?
I,
Does that feel like any sort of clarity around the issue for any administration? Yeah? And so encompassed in that is the idea that it's not just a preschool, but it would be working with the Head Start.
Right, and I think it'd be important to get Deb Gass involved, because I know when it comes to this, I've had with her, she's mentioned it's a really rigorous and complicated process, expected to take a year. And I don't know what those things are that you would have to do, but she's also told me that there's possible to get federal funds to build or renovate, to make a space accessible for pre-K, which has different levels of, with different requirements than a regular kindergarten classroom, for example. Bathroom access,
We've done that with
playground.
Upper Central, 8 years ago, so.
Yeah, I would hope that we could talk to Putnam as well.
Yeah, we were part of that.
We-
Me,
Yeah.
Deb,
Deb, let's just.
and the principal. So we'll talk about that.
Okay, so at the moment then, on our work plan, we're not gonna do a preschool forum.
Right.
You're gonna take that off?
Yep.
You already did?
Yep.
Update on superintendent search, you already did? Brings us to the backside. Act 46 update.
Meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at the Cusick room.
what is that?
Seriously?
Going by BAM's.
No, there's never enough. Go in where the buses park and let out
Yeah.
kids be the dams and
Yeah.
UHS across from the church.
The furthest door to the left.
Go all the way down the hallway, go up the stairs and go all the way back down the hallway. And there, you can't just go straight up. So, that, on the agenda specifically for tomorrow night, we'll be revisiting based on the, as I mentioned before, based on some input from the town clerks. The practicalities of having the vote on November 8th. So, it's just a heads up, it seems like that would be really hard. So, we'll discuss that tomorrow night. Well, because the ballots are already at the printers, and there's only a certain amount of printers that can print that go through the machines, and the machines are the way that things are tabulated, and so it gets very complex and confusing. You'd have to have hand tabulations of just those votes, and the number of people that come to vote for the president's race is much higher than what come out for voting normally. So it would mean extra staff. Also, the absentee ballots are already sent out as of September 23rd, was it?
Mm-hmm.
And ours wouldn't be ready and printed, so we would have to actually have
Send out another 500.
another one. That's the estimate just for Brattleboro. So those are all things we'll hear about more tomorrow night. But that's the last meeting. We did vote to send the Articles of Agreement up to the State Board of Education for approval. And then we would have, are we still on track for a meeting with the state on September 20th?
I'm not sure. I think it'll depend on what we decide tomorrow night.
So to be continued.
Yep.
Any other under old business? Otherwise moving to new business and to Frank.
Okay. Everybody have a document I just handed around? Did you get one, Jerry?
One more.
One more, here we go. Okay, so I'll briefly review a procurement procedure. So this is an administrative procedure, you know. The background here is federal government has changed procurement requirements. We receive a significant amount of federal aid in Brattleboro town. We just noted that on our financial report, you know, 600,000. The supervisory union receives over 3 million in federal aid. And essentially they've said they don't want to see procurement process different between local money and federal money. And that's prompted us to revisit our purchasing guides, and this is a rough draft, so know that these documents will change, but they're an outline, and I do hope to meet with principals and over the next couple of weeks, get feedback, and we'll refine this into something that's workable. But the general outline is the federal guidelines break down purchasing in really just 2 increments, but they say if you're a small state like Vermont, go ahead and differentiate anything that relates to state law. So they allow us to do that, of course. So that brings our purchasing procedure into a 3-level procedure. So the first level there on that first page is the federal term is micro purchases less than 3,000. The second flow chart there is small purchases between 3,000 and 15,000. And then our state law says we have a threshold of a public bid process at 15,000 and above. I didn't put on this document the other portion of the state law that says there's another set of rules for purchases above 500,000, just because they're so infrequent, it's not necessary. So this is intended to be a administrative procedure that helps the system be accountable for our use of public funds and getting demonstrating that we're getting great value for the purchases that we make as part of the school system. So generally what this package does is essentially says if it's less than 3,000, look at the yellow sheet, which is an informal purchasing process, but it is required that there's a rationale for choosing a vendor. Doesn't necessarily have to be lowest price, could be availability, could be that it's a local vendor, it could be a number of things, but there has to be a rationale. And the federal requirements prefer that it's not the same vendor over an extended period of time, which would be more than a year. So they like to see a variety of vendors. Andy, let me just zip through and then we can look at it. And I've already rewritten most of that first sheet because I see a lot of redundancies in that procedure there. But anyways, so the second level is something that's probably familiar to our folks, but it has been at the $500 level instead of the $3,000 level, and that is that we do require 3 quotes. It's not a formal bid process where there is an advertisement and there is a sealed bid, but we do want to see 3 documented quotes. And in most cases, we still need a specification, but it's not the full specification document that we'll see on the next page. The third category is on that blue sheet. This is basically excerpts from the state law, but it's introducing some internal procedure around who provides what, when. And essentially it's saying that the building administrator would forward a specification to the Wyndham Southeast Business Office, that any procurement at this level would be part of a capital plan, something that a school board would have been aware of as part of the budget process, and that then we would follow these procedures around, as you see, minimum requirements, a walkthrough, sealed bid, a public bid opening, and then a contract award. And it is based on the criteria that the state law establishes, and that's all quoted in this document. The final attachment is the actual bid template. It is for the sealed bid. It's what we have been using for the last couple of years that I've been here, and it essentially says on a certain date there will be a public bid opening. Within the document there are qualifications for the vendor to participate. There's a scope of work and a specification that includes generally a timeline. If you leaf through here, you also see that there are insurance requirements, warranties, and then there is the bid form that says when you submit your bid, we want to see a standard response by the vendor so we can compare apples to apples, and there's a bid form, and then the last page would be the public bid opening where we record the bids and we share them with all participants in the process. So there's sort of a brief overview of a rough draft, and I expect to have a final draft certainly before the budget season starts, hopefully within a month. Yes?
For the yellow, at what dollar value are we required to use that? It's up to 3,000 is there a minimum?
Yeah, there is what I see is the current requisition that we use now should be the same form. I don't see us needing 2 separate forms. And I think our current policy says that if we have purchases over $50, we want to see a requisition. Otherwise, if it's something where somebody's picked up something and wants reimbursement through a petty cash process, we could do that. But yeah, I would see no reason to have a requisition and this form. So I see those things being merged.
A significant number of our purchases are $140, $80. They're small office supply, classroom supplies. In number of requisitions, that I think those probably are a very high percentage of our numbers of requisitions. They're probably under $300.
Yeah.
So just hoping that we can maintain something that's efficient of use of our time. So we,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, one thing that is is available to us through, from a systems point of view, is extending the ability of the building administrator to generate purchase orders. But the way the system is set up now, all payments, all checks are processed with a purchase order, and the purchase order often is simply it's kind of like an internal voucher. It's not really what a purchase order is designed for, and I do see an opportunity to streamline a lot of that end, because that's a lot of paperwork that's probably not a great use of our time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jerry and Mark will agree that sometimes it feels like we get buried in very unimportant paperwork. We sign our name and do a lot of checking. It takes hours each week for us to stay on top of that.
And what this allows for is a building administrator designee as well, which I think is important. You know, so I know your administrative assistants are all very busy as well, but there can be ways to structure this so we do have good accountability. We do have the documentation that the federal programs require, and but we use the technology to automate a lot.
Is there an exception to any of this?
Yes, there are some exceptions.
I don't see that
the-
noted, maybe.
Well, the main exception is in the blue form, and I will actually add that at the bottom. The blue form, Title 16.559, there's a section E, provision 1. It says, state law does not require books and educational instructional materials to be subject to this bidding procedure, which I think is wise, because we often will purchase reading street programs, all kinds of programs, where if we had to do this bid process, it would really distract us from important work. So I'll have a provision at the bottom of this that says purchases subject to provisions of Title 16, blah blah blah, will be determined by the SU office.
Wondering about a time exception, because some of this seems like. Yeah.
Oh yes, there's another provision in the state law that also says that, and I didn't want to put the exceptions out as part of the lead procedure, just because I don't want people to think that, oh, here's my exception, and make it easy. But there is another provision in state law that does say if it is a emergency circumstance, then the bidding requirements do not apply. If it's a safety, health and safety issue.
And so from the board perspective, we don't really look at anything until it gets to $15,000 or greater.
And that's still something that I'd like to refine with the board, in that if we go to our policy, our current policy, E1, this is fiscal management and general financial accountability. It basically is broad as I would expect it to be, and it says the approved budget will be the spending plan for the year. The superintendent or his designee is authorized to make commitments in accordance with the budget appropriations. So that blanket statement is basically saying superintendent, if he's designating me as the authorized personnel to make those commitments, it can end there. My sense is that the capital plan will define the larger projects, that, like the Academy Pellet project, where there is a lot of board input into the spending and the commitment, and so there would be a board review of that progress, and particularly when it requires a separate funding source, not the general operating fund. Aside from that, my recommendation is that we just follow this policy, which is superintendent or his designee implements the appropriations that have been approved. Keeps the board out of the micro level of operations.
So you'd want to change your front sheet and take off the notation school board.
Yeah, I kept that as there as just a placeholder that says, there are certain levels that I would want to see engaged, like 500,000 for sure.
Well, there's just a lot of difference between 15 and 500.
There is, yeah. That's part of the draft, yeah.
Any other questions on this? Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
That brings us to the last item. 2 minutes over. Oh, we started 15, 20 minutes late, so we're good. Next agenda items.
So we're gonna have the students come on the 21st.
The Act 46 form that we once talked about, so that's not. Anything
June?
else anybody have?
I'm not clear on the process with the internal for rounds replacement. I don't know what's going on with that.
So the Finance Committee is essentially, with representation from each board, is doing the initial screening of the internal candidates. And as I think I reported last week, the last meeting, there'll be various focus groups that'll be set up.
Right.
I mean, and so they're.
Yeah, I remember all that, I just didn't know if we knew timing.
As I said, I think we're looking at mid-September through the end of October, where we'll make a decision, I would hope in early November. So we will look at our meeting plan again with revisions.
We wouldn't have anything on preschool next time, right?
No, I think it's too early.
Meeting plan. And I think we'll have some sort of an Act 46 report back again on the, specifically on the date of the vote. And will probably be board state All right, anything else? Take a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. We're done.